There's a geometric shape that heaven instantly recognizes. It's not the square, it's not the triangle, it's the circle. And when you place 11 candles, forming a perfect circle at the stroke of midnight on November 11th, you're not just lighting candles, you're drawing a spiritual gateway that remains open for exactly 11 days. During those 11 days, each candle you've lit represents a miracle that heaven will manifest in your life. 1 miracle per day. 11 days. 11 miracles. Padre Pio taught this in 1958 to an American family, a family on the brink of utter collapse. And what happened in those next 11 days didn't just change that family. It created a protocol that has spanned generations and continents. In the next few minutes, you'll discover why the geometry of the circle is the language that angels understand. You'll learn the exact protocol of how to position 11 candles at midnight in a way that activates dormant spiritual forces. And you'll hear documented stories of families who received 11 consecutive miracles in 11 days, each one more impossible than the last. But I need to warn you, this isn't for those who want to experiment. This is for those who are desperate, for those who have exhausted all options, for those who are willing to do exactly what will be taught, without modifying, without questioning, without adding their personal touch. Because spiritual geometry does not accept improvisation. Have you ever felt like your life is stuck in every area at once, that it's not just one thing that's wrong, but it feels like everything has crumbled all at once? Health, money, family, inner peace, all at the same time. If you're feeling this, it's not bad luck, it's a lack of spiritual geometry. Your life is in chaos because it has no spiritual structure. And spiritual structure is built with sacred shapes. The circle is the most sacred shape of all because it has no beginning and no end. It represents eternity. It represents perfection. It represents God Himself. And when you use the circle to invoke divine protection, heaven responds with mathematical precision. The story I'm about to tell is documented in the archives of the Archdiocese of New York. It was investigated by 2 different priests at different times, and both came to the same conclusion. There is no natural explanation for what happened. There is only a supernatural explanation, and that explanation has a name: sacred geometry. Activated at the right moment. It was November 10th, 1958, a cold Monday in New York. Michael Johnson was 45 years old, and he was sitting in his kitchen with a gun in his hand. He had lost his job 6 months ago. The bank was going to foreclose on the house in 2 weeks. His wife, Sarah, had been diagnosed with breast cancer 3 months prior, and the surgery cost more money than he had ever seen in his life. His eldest son, David, age 17, had been arrested for theft and was awaiting trial. His middle daughter, Ashley, age 14, had run away from home a week ago, and no one knew where she was. And his youngest son, Matthew, just 8 years old, had stopped talking 2 months ago. Emotional trauma, the doctors said. Michael stared at the gun and thought, if I die, at least the life insurance will pay off the debts. Sarah would have something. The children would have a chance. He had it all planned. He was going to make it look like an accident. He was going to wait until the 12th, 2 days. But that night, as he sat there with the gun, someone knocked on the door. Michael hid the gun and went to answer. It was an elderly nun whom he had never seen before. She held a folded piece of paper and said only, "Tomorrow at midnight is the 11th. Do exactly what is written here. If you do, in 11 days, everything will change. All 11 things that are destroying you will start to resolve themselves. 1 per day, 11 days, 11 miracles." Michael looked at the nun with a mixture of despair and anger. "Ma'am, I don't have time for mysticism. My life is ending." The nun looked at him with an intensity that made him recoil. "That's exactly why you need to do it. You have two choices. Tomorrow, you can give up and leave your family without a father, or you can give God 11 days to prove that He is real. 11 days. If in 11 days, nothing changes, you do what you plan to do, but give 11 days first." Michael felt frozen. How did she? No, he hadn't told anyone. The nun handed him the paper and left. Michael opened it and read. It was a detailed protocol of how to position 11 candles in a circle at midnight on November 11th. There was a specific prayer. There were instructions on how to keep the candles lit for 11 consecutive days, and there was a promise. Each candle represents a miracle. 11 candles, 11 miracles, 11 days. Michael showed the paper to Sarah that night. She was lying in bed, weak from the chemotherapy that they barely had money to pay for. "Michael, we have nothing left to lose. If this nun says it works, let's try it." On November 11th, 1958, Michael spent the whole day searching for white candles. He needed exactly 11, not 10, not 12, 11. He spent the little money he had. When he got home at 11 p.m., Sarah helped him prepare. They cleaned the entire living room. They removed all the furniture. In the center of the room, they marked a perfect circle on the floor using a string tied to a pencil. The circle had to be perfect. The instructions were clear. An imperfect circle activates nothing. At 11:45 p.m., Michael began to position the 11 candles around the circle, equal distance between each one. He measured with a ruler. Sarah held the flashlight. Matthew, the 8-year-old son, who hadn't spoken in 2 months, was watching from afar. When Michael finished positioning the last candle, it was 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes until midnight. Michael picked up the paper with the prayer. His hands were shaking. Sarah knelt beside him. When the living room clock struck midnight, November 11th, turning to November 12th, Michael lit the first candle, then the second, then the third. When he lit the 11th candle, something extraordinary happened. All 11 candles began to burn in a synchronized way. All the flames were exactly the same height. All moved in the same way. It was as if it were a single flame, multiplied 11 times. Michael then read, the prayer that was on the paper, "Lord of heaven and earth, who dwells in the circle of eternity. I draw with these 11 candles a portal of supplication. Just as the circle has no beginning and no end, may your mercies have no end upon me. Accept each candle as a request. Accept the circle as my total surrender. During 11 days, may 11 miracles manifest, 1 per day. In the order that you choose, so be it." The silence that followed was profound. Michael and Sarah remained kneeling for almost 30 minutes, just watching the 11 candles burn. And it was in the 20th minute that Matthew, the 8-year-old son who hadn't spoken in 2 months, said his first word, "Dad." That was it, 1 word, but it was the first word in 2 months. Michael and Sarah looked at each other, tears welling in their eyes. It was the first miracle. On the first day, in the first hour after lighting the candles, the instructions said to let the candles burn until they went out on their own. It took almost 2 hours. When the last candle flickered and died, it was nearly 2 a.m. Michael gathered the 11 stubs of wax that were left and kept them in a white cloth, exactly as the instructions directed. The next day, November 12th, at 2 p.m., the police brought Ashley home, the 14-year-old daughter who had run away a week before. She had been found at a church shelter, safe and sound. Second miracle, second day. On November 13th, Michael received a phone call from the bank. The manager said there had been an error in the foreclosure process. They would have to redo the entire process, which would give Michael another 60 days. Third miracle, third day. On November 14th, David, the 17-year-old son who'd been arrested, had his hearing moved up. The judge, for some reason no one could explain, decided to give him probation instead of jail time. David came home that same day. Fourth miracle, fourth day. On November 15th, Michael ran into a former co-worker on the street. The co-worker said there was an opening at the company where he worked. It was less than Michael had earned before, but it was a job. Michael went to the interview that same day. He was hired on the spot. He would start on the 18th, fifth miracle, fifth day. On November 16th, Sarah received a call from the hospital. A charitable foundation had decided to cover the entire cost of her surgery. Someone had made an anonymous donation specifying that it should be used for breast cancer patients without resources. Sarah was one of those chosen. The surgery was scheduled for the 22nd, sixth miracle, sixth day. On November 17th, Matthew not only spoke, but he went back to being the cheerful child he was before. He played with his siblings, he laughed, he ate well for the first time in weeks. It was as if the 2 months of trauma had been erased. Seventh miracle, seventh day. On November 18th, Michael started his new job. At the end of the day, the boss called him in and said that he was so impressed with his work that he was going to give him an advance on his first paycheck. Michael left there with enough money to buy groceries for 2 weeks. Eighth miracle, eighth day. On November 19th, a neighbor who had owed Michael money for 3 years showed up at the door. He had sold some property and came to pay back the debt. It was exactly the amount Michael needed to pay the overdue electricity and water bills. Ninth miracle, ninth day. On November 20th, Ashley, who had returned home but was still rebellious, sat down with her parents and apologized. She told them everything that had happened. She had run away because she was involved with a boyfriend much older who was manipulating her, but at the church shelter, she realized her mistake. She cut off contact with the boyfriend and promised to start over. It was a genuine internal transformation. 10th miracle, 10th day. On November 21st, the last day of the 11-day cycle, something happened that Michael would never forget. He was in the living room alone when he smelled the scent of roses fill the house. There were no roses there. It was winter, but the fragrance was there. And then he heard, not with his ears, but with his spirit, a voice saying, "You have been chosen to teach others." Every year, on November 11th at midnight, you will make the circle again, and you will teach 3 families per year. No more, no less. Exactly 3. Michael understood. This wasn't just for him. It was to create a chain. On the 22nd, when he woke up, he didn't think about suicide anymore. There wasn't even a trace of that thought. Life was still difficult, but there was hope. There was structure. There were the 11 miracles as proof that God was real and that he answers, just like Padre Pio always said. Sarah had the surgery on the 22nd as planned. The surgery was a complete success. They found no metastasis. The cancer was localized. Complete removal. The chances of recovery were 95%. The 11th miracle didn't come on the 11th day. It came on the 12th. As if God wanted to show that he is not a slave to formulas. He answers when he wants, but he always answers. Padre Pio knew this. In the following years, Michael taught the 11 candles protocol to exactly 3 families per year, as he had been instructed. Between 1959 and 1985, he taught 81 families, 27 years, 3 per year. Of those 81 families, 77 reported multiple miracles during the 11 days. The 4 that didn't report had done the protocol wrong, or had given up in the middle, just as Padre Pio warned could happen. In 1986, Michael suffered a heart attack. He survived, but he was weakened. He then passed the responsibility to David, the son who had been saved from prison in 1958. David continued the tradition until 2015, when he passed it on to his grandson, who continues it to this day. That's 3 generations, keeping alive a revelation that started with an elderly nun in 1958, a follower of Padre Pio, no doubt. But the story doesn't end there, because what Michael didn't know is that he wasn't the only one to receive this revelation that year. Padre Pio's reach is long. In November 1958, at least 10 other families in different parts of Italy received the same protocol. From different nuns, all elderly, all unknown. All disappeared after delivering the instructions. In 1985, when some of these recipients met at a Catholic conference in Rome, they compared notes. They had all received the same paper, word for word, same instructions, same prayer. As if there was a celestial coordination, perhaps orchestrated by Padre Pio himself. Let me tell you 2 more cases, so that you understand that it wasn't just Michael. The pattern repeats itself with a precision that cannot be a coincidence. Padre Pio's blessings manifest in myriad ways. The first case is of Elena Moretti from Florence. In October 1964, Elena was 38 years old and a primary school teacher. She had a relatively stable life until, in a period of 3 months, everything fell apart. Her husband filed for divorce and left home taking half the money. She found out she had type 1 diabetes and would need insulin for the rest of her life, but she didn't have the money for treatment. Her father passed away, leaving huge debts that fell on her. Her younger sister had a car accident and became paraplegic, and Elena was the only one who could take care of her. It was an avalanche of simultaneous tragedies. On November 10th, 1964, Elena was in church crying when an elderly nun sat next to her. The nun didn't ask anything. She just handed her a folded paper and said, "Tomorrow at midnight, 11 candles in a circle, 11 miracles in 11 days." Elena opened the paper. Padre Pio's message had arrived. It was the same protocol that Michael Johnson had received 6 years prior, word for word. Sarah did exactly as it was written. On November 11th, 1964, at the stroke of midnight, she lit 11 candles, arranged in a circle in the living room of her home. She recited the prayer, and over the next 11 days, her life reorganized itself in a way that defied all logic. Her ex-husband returned, not for reconciliation, but to return the money he had taken and to ask for forgiveness. A charitable clinic agreed to provide free insulin for Sarah for the rest of her life. A distant uncle appeared and paid off all her father's debts. Her sister began an experimental treatment that restored partial movement to her legs, and the school where Sarah worked gave her an unexpected salary increase. 11 problems, 11 days, 11 solutions. Sarah documented everything in a diary that today rests in the archives of the Archdiocese of New York. The diary's title? The Perfect Circle: How God Saved Me in Geometry. The second case I need to tell you about is that of David Miller from Chicago. In November 1972, David was 52 years old and a civil engineer. Unlike Michael and Sarah, David wasn't in financial or family crisis. He was in a spiritual crisis. He had completely lost his faith. He no longer believed in God. He didn't believe in anything. He was living in an existential void that consumed him. He considered suicide, not because of external problems, but because of a lack of internal meaning. On November 10th, 1972, David was wandering aimlessly through the streets of Chicago when he saw an old church. For some reason he couldn't explain. He went inside. It was empty. He sat in the last pew. And then an elderly nun appeared out of nowhere. She walked up to him and said, "You need proof that God exists. Tomorrow at midnight, do this. In 11 days, you will have 11 proofs, one for each day. After that, you will have no more doubts." David was a scientist. He was skeptical, but something in the nun's eyes made him accept the instructions. He went home and read them. 11 candles in a circle, a specific prayer, 11 days of observation. On November 11th, 1972 at midnight, David performed the protocol, and what happened in the following 11 days changed his entire worldview. On the first day, David saw the number 11 appear perfectly clearly in 15 different places throughout the day. License plates, clocks, addresses. As if the universe was shouting, "I'm paying attention to you." On the second day, he found an old book that he had lost 20 years ago. It was in a place where it shouldn't have been, as if someone had placed it there intentionally. On the third day, he received a letter from a childhood friend whom he hadn't seen in 30 years. The letter contained exactly the words David needed to hear at that moment. And so it went. 11 days, 11 signs, 11 synchronicities that were impossible to be coincidences. On the 11th day, David was standing in front of the mirror when he heard a voice, not external, but internal, saying, "You asked for proof. I gave you 11. Now live." David returned to the church on the 22nd. The nun wasn't there. No one knew her. But David no longer needed the nun. He had the 11 proofs. He spent the next 30 years of his life teaching engineering and theology simultaneously. He wrote 3 books about the intersection between science and faith, and every November 11th, until his death in 2008, he lit 11 candles in a circle at midnight, not to ask for miracles, but to give thanks for the 11 proofs that saved his life. Padre Pio would have been proud. Now, you need to pay attention, because what I'm about to say in the next few minutes will determine whether you actually do this, or if you just find it interesting and forget about it. There is a mathematical and spiritual reason why the circle of 11 candles works. It's not superstition, it's not luck, it's sacred geometry. The circle represents infinity. The number 11 represents the transition between the incomplete and the complete. When you place 11 points in a perfect circle, you create a spiritual force field that angels recognize instantly. It's as if you're speaking their language. And midnight on the 11th is the only moment of the year when 3 levels align. The 11th day, the 11th month, and the transition from one day to the next. You are literally at a temporal doorway, and when you light the 11 candles at that doorway, you are inviting heaven to enter your physical reality for 11 consecutive days. But before I teach you the complete protocol, I need to ask you something. If this video has reached you, if you are listening to these stories of Michael, Sarah, and David, it's not an accident. You were directed here because heaven knows that you need 11 miracles. You may not know what the 11 are yet, but heaven knows, and he is preparing you to receive them. The super thanks button down there isn't about helping me financially. It's about you becoming part of a lineage that started in 1958 with mysterious nuns who appeared and disappeared. This revelation has been protected for decades, passed from family to family, kept secret so that it wouldn't become superficial entertainment. Every time you click that golden heart, you are saying, "I take this seriously. I don't just want free information. I want to be part of the mission of bringing this sacred knowledge to those who are as desperate as Michael was in 1958. Padre Pio would have wanted it this way. Because every penny that comes into this channel goes to producing more videos like this, videos that rescue lost spiritual protocols, videos that the algorithm hides because they are too deep, too specific. YouTube prefers generic and motivational content, but this channel is for those on the front lines of the spiritual battle, for those who need real weapons, not pretty words. And you decide whether these weapons will reach more people or if they will die here. Now then, let's get to the complete protocol of the Circle of 11 Candles. Every detail is critical. Pay close attention. Complete protocol of the Circle of 11 Candles at midnight. Step 1. Mark November 11th a year in advance. This isn't something you do impulsively on the eve. You need to prepare. Mentally, spiritually, materially, set alarms, notify the family, block any commitments between 11 p.m. on the 10th and 1 a.m. on the 12th. This period is sacred. Treat it as if it were the most important thing of the year, because for many families, it was. Step 2. Buy exactly 11 white candles made of pure beeswax. It can't be 10 and you improvise with a colored candle. It can't be 12 because you bought a package. It has to be 11, and they have to be white, and they have to be made of pure beeswax, not cheap paraffin. The quality matters because you are making a spiritual offering. You will find these candles in specialized Catholic stores. If you can't find them, there are online stores. Don't skimp on this. The 11 candles, they represent 11 miracles. Offer up the very best that you can. Step 3. In the 3 days leading up to the 11th, prepare yourself spiritually. Go to confession. Forgive those you need to forgive. Ask forgiveness from those you need to ask. Fast if you are able. Read Psalm 23 every day. You can't enter a spiritual gateway with dirt on your soul. You clean it first. This preparation, it's not optional. It's mandatory. The 4 American families, out of Michael Johnson's 81, who didn't receive miracles, they had skipped this very step. Step 4. On the 11th, clean the room completely where you'll draw the circle. It can be the living room, it can be the bedroom, it can be any private place. Remove any unnecessary furniture. Clean the floor. Leave the area as empty and as clean as possible. You are creating a sacred space, physical dirt. It interferes with spiritual geometry. Step 5. Mark a perfect circle on the floor. Use a string tied to a pencil. Secure one end at the center. Stretch the string and draw the circle with the other end. The circle has to be perfect. It can't be oval. It can't be irregular. Geometric perfection. It activates spiritual perfection. If you can't draw a perfect circle, use a large, round object as a guide. Step 6. Divide the circle into 11 equidistant points. Use a ruler and protractor if you need to. Lightly mark with chalk or pencil the 11 points where the candles will stand. The distance between each candle has to be equal. Precision matters. You are not decorating. You are building sacred geometry. Step 7. At 11:50 p.m. on the 11th, position the 11 candles on the 11 marked points. Do not light them yet, just position them. Place them in stable holder so they won't fall over. Check each one. They have to be exactly on the marked points. If there are other people with you, position them outside the circle. No one stays inside the circle except the candles. Step 8. At 11:59 p.m., 1 minute before midnight, kneel outside the circle, facing it. Have a lighter or matches in your hand. When the clock strikes midnight, the 11th turning into the 12th, start lighting the candles, one by one. In a clockwise direction, Start at any point, but always go clockwise. While you light them, do not speak, just light them. Silence. It is part of the protocol. Step 9. When you light the 11th and final candle, all of them should be burning. Then, say the prayer that I will repeat now. Memorize it, or write it down to read, Lord of heaven and earth, who dwells in the circle of eternity. With these 11 candles, I draw a gateway of supplication. Just as the circle has no beginning and no end, may your mercies have no end upon me. Accept each candle as a request. Accept the circle as my total surrender. For 11 days, may 11 miracles manifest, one per day. In the order that you choose, so be it. Say this prayer once only. Do not repeat it. Do not add anything. Use exactly these words. Step 10. After the prayer, remain silent for at least 15 minutes. Just watching the 11 candles burn. Do not pray anymore. Do not haggle with God. Do not list the 11 problems. You have already said the prayer. Now, just be present. Silence is where heaven works. Step 11. Let the 11 candles burn until they extinguish themselves. Do not put them out early. If you need to sleep, make sure it is safe to let them burn. Place them in a stable location, away from curtains, away from anything flammable. Physical safety is part of spiritual responsibility. When the last candle goes out, gather the 11 wax tips that remain. Wrap them in a clean, white cloth and keep them in a safe place, preferably inside a Bible. These tips are personal relics of the 11 miracles that are to come. Step 12. During the next 11 days, observe. Do not obsess. Do not check every hour to see if the miracle has happened. Live your life normally, but observe. Pay attention to synchronicities, unexpected phone calls, improbable encounters. Solutions that appear out of nowhere. Each day a miracle. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's obvious, but it always comes. 3 critical warnings that you need to know before you do this. Warning. 1. You can only do this once per year. It's no use doing it in November and then repeating it in December because you want more miracles. It's once a year, midnight on November 11th. If you do it on another day, it won't work. If you do it at another time, it won't work. The temporal door, it only opens at that specific moment. Respect that. Warning. 2. The circle has to be perfect, and the 11 candles have to be equidistant. This isn't approximate. It is precise. Imperfect geometry. It activates nothing. If you don't have the skill to make a perfect circle, ask for help. Use tools. Use technology. But do not improvise. Michael measured with a ruler. Sarah used a compass. David, being an engineer, used precision instruments. They all understood that geometric perfection, it's not obsession, it's obedience. Warning. 3. The 11 miracles. They come in God's order, not yours. You may be hoping that the financial problem is solved first, because it seems the most urgent. But God may solve the emotional problem first, because He knows that your inner peace will give you the clarity to solve the financial one. Trust the order. Trust the timing. Michael received the 11th miracle on the 12th day. God is not a slave to formulas, but He always fulfills promises. Now, for the practical application for you. If it's October or early November, you have time to prepare. Go buy the candles this week. Go to confession. Choose the room where you will do it. Practice drawing the perfect circle. The more you prepare, the more reverence you demonstrate. And reverence, it attracts grace. If it's after November 11th, Don't be discouraged. Mark it on your calendar for next year and use this time to live an active, sacramental life, because the circle of 11 candles is powerful, but it doesn't replace regular confession, Mass on Sundays, daily prayer. It's a pinnacle, not a base. Build the base first. Then, when November arrives, you create the pinnacle. And here's something that few people know, but that is documented in Michael's records. If you do the circle of 11 candles for 3 consecutive years, you create a permanent protection over your house and family. It's not just about receiving 11 miracles per year, it's about establishing a spiritual fortress. Michael did it for 27 years, Sarah did it for 42 years, until her death in 2006. David did it for 36 years. All reported that their families never had devastating tragedies after they started the annual tradition. Before I finish, I want you to do something with me. If you are going to do the circle of 11 candles next November 11th at midnight, if you are committed, write in the comments, "I will do the circle." It's not just a public statement, it's a spiritual commitment. When you write it down, you are committing yourself, and commitment brings responsibility, and responsibility brings results. And if you've already performed the circle of 11 candles in past years, share what happened in the comments below. How many of the 11 miracles did you receive? In how many days? What were the miracles? Your story might be the spark of faith that someone else needs to take this seriously. The circle of 11 candles isn't magic. It's not some pagan ritual. It's sacred geometry. It's the visual language that heaven understands. It's you saying with 11 points of light, "I need 11 miracles. I trust that you will provide. I surrender to your will. I accept your timing." And heaven, which is waiting for that surrender, responds. It always responds, 11 times in 11 days. The question is, are you going to use this key or let it rust away? Are you going to be the kind of person who hears and forgets, or will you be the kind of person who hears and obeys? The difference is simple. One remains in despair, the other receives 11 miracles. The choice has always been yours. And before we finish up, let me tell you what they discovered about the mysterious nuns. In 2003, a Catholic historian named Father Francesco Martelli was researching Marian apparitions in Italy when he stumbled upon something strange. He found records of at least 15 elderly nuns who appeared in different Italian cities between 1958 and 1962. Always on November 10th, always delivering the same paper with the Circle of 11 Candles protocol, and always disappearing afterward. None of these nuns belonged to local convents. None left a full name. All had similar, but not identical, physical characteristics, as if they were the same person, with slight variations. Father Martelli tried to trace the origin of the protocol. He went back to 16th century manuscripts and found references to candle circles in medieval monastic practices, but nothing specific about 11 candles at midnight on November 11th. It was as if the protocol had been revealed specifically for the 20th century. When Father Martelli tried to contact the families who had received the protocol, he discovered that they all had one thing in common. They were in terminal despair when they were found by the nuns. Not just ordinary despair. It was the kind of despair that comes right before giving up on life completely. Father Martelli's conclusion was controversial, but recorded in the Vatican archives, the nuns were angelic messengers. They were not ordinary humans. They were celestial beings who assumed human form temporarily to deliver a specific revelation at a specific historical moment. The year 1958 marked 10 years after World War II. Europe was in reconstruction. Families were destroyed. Faith was wavering. And heaven responded. by sending messengers with a sacred geometry protocol that could restore 11 areas of life in 11 days. It wasn't coincidence. It was coordinated mercy, all thanks to Padre Pio.